Who's ready, people? Monday Night Football getting busy in the streets. Donnie right side, it is Tom Vecchio. And also, 2 games tonight, and also a Major League Baseball game we might dip our toes into just a little bit right here to have some fun with. But it looks like AWS is having issues tonight, but not with Restream or StreamYard. So here we are, Tom, live with the people tonight.
Yeah, we're live. FanDuel's been down all day. Complete outage by Amazon Web Services. Can't place anything there. A lot of action on DK today, which is not the norm for me, at least. Fanatics is also down, at least for me. So been all over the place. You mentioned baseball. I did a show last night with Brady where I was talking about I really want to bet on the Mariners money line, but I want to use the FanDuel boost at 30% to get it up to plus 130, plus 140, whatever it is. Obviously I can simply bet on it on DK, but I obviously want the better odds. So been all over the place today.
Yeah, we got two games to talk about. We're going to hit some Major League Baseball before we end the show. Just give a couple odds, news, and notes on that. But you have sort of a 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and a 10 o'clock game tonight. If we include baseball right in the middle, you got hockey tonight as well. Tomorrow the NBA starts, so it is a really good time. But tonight the focus is on the NFL, Tom. Game number 1, 7 o'clock start, 475, 476. That's Tampa and Detroit. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff. Line all week long, Tom's been 5.5. We have some movement at other outlets to 6 here, and also a heavy number at 54.5. What are you looking at, Tom? First, we'll start with the side in this game and/or the total.
5.5 is obviously it's a weird number. We're not sitting at 3. We're not sitting at 6.5 or 7. I will say, I've seen a lot of stats today on Twitter saying, when the Lions are coming off a loss. They're 11-0 under Dan Campbell coming off a loss. And, you look at a lot of those home games where, they don't only cover as 5.5. They often win by 10, 12, 14 points, whatever it's going to be. And this is one of those spots. Now, the Bucs are obviously a quality team. A lot of people are going to say that they've been on the right side of luck just because they've won X amount of games by 2 points, 1 point, 3 points. They're constantly getting lucky. The news is that Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka are in. So that is certainly a bolster to the Bucs defense. It's got to be points tonight. It's just got to be points tonight. The defense for the Lions is absolutely terrible, and their offense is too good. They can realistically go out and drop 30 points, which is where their team total is. And the Bucs have too many offensive options to not score against this defense.
By the way, when I look at this game, too, I love the way that Detroit always plays at home. They are a home team, but understand this. My best bet on the early line this morning was Detroit, because I do think Detroit wins the game. So if I think they win, probably going to be by a touchdown. But Tom is right about the total in this environment. Here's what you love about Dan Campbell and also what you're going to see for Baker Mayfield. They're not kicking field goals tonight. 4th and 1 from the 19-yard line, 4th and 2 from the 19-yard line. They are going for this tonight, which you do like it here because you're trading touchdowns, or you're trading field goals for touchdowns in those spots here. I think that makes a big difference. Same thing yesterday, Tom. We were talking about the Dallas game in Washington. Oh, no, there's no wide receivers. That's going to hurt the over-under. No, it didn't. They blasted right through that. Sometimes just aggressive teams. And also, Tom, I think you'll agree with me. I don't know what we're getting out of Mike Evans and Egbuka tonight. But if they're willing enough to play, there's some thought that they should be okay tonight. That secondary for Detroit, I went over the depth chart, Tom. I never heard of half the guys that are playing in the secondary tonight. That's got to mean something for the total. Perfect matchup.
It really does. And I was a little bit surprised that Emeka Egbuka is going to play because they have a bye next week. And I was thinking, a lot of people were thinking okay, he's a little bit banged up. He's been dealing with injuries for a couple of weeks now. Right. You could just give him this game off and have the bye next week and you'll be fully healthy, ready to go. The point, to make about Egbuka and Evans playing, I would actually say they'd be more aggressive if they weren't playing on 4th down, because the Bucs would have to score to keep up with Detroit. So I am very inclined to take the points. And again, if these teams are being more aggressive on 4th down, they are more likely to score touchdowns. Therefore, Detroit, as an example, are more likely to cover 6 points rather than just settle for 3. So it does actually put things in the favor for covering the spread.
Numbers been moving here, Tom Force. But you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to go to scores and odds. Let you sort of set up the table here to just say, what, let's look at the best numbers. Because I typically use FanDuel because it's very easy to rip around. But I think this might work out for us as well. Let me just check this out. Let me just see passing yards. We'll start with that in game number 1. Let me just filter this through. We'll go open. There we go. Jared Goff tonight. Best on the market at Hard Rock. But it's heavily juiced. Sometimes they put those juice numbers up. 255. Let's call it. What? He's got to be around what? Like 260, high 260s, I guess, without the juice at this point. You take a look at Baker Mayfield again. Not with the juice. He's somewhere around that high 250s number. and you take a look at C.J. Stroud and Sam Darnold, which we'll get to. Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield tonight. Which quarterback are you looking for more action on, Tom?
I'd be looking for more action on Baker, and it's simply just due to the fact that I think the Lions are going to be playing from in front. And when they play from in front, they're going to be running the game.
Yeah.
They're going to be running the ball and controlling the game. And whether it's Gibbs, whether it's Montgomery, I specifically like Montgomery tonight, for a prop. But, Goff can be really efficient. And we've seen these games last year where he's like, 21 of 23 and has 212 yards and 3 touchdowns because they're at a spot where they don't need to pass at a high volume because they're breaking off these big runs, whatever it might be. So I think Baker will be there from a volume perspective because he needs to pass the ball. And they're going to be playing from behind.
I agree because I think the aggressiveness here, and also understand, like the team, both of these teams are going to get pressure. That's what they're going to try to do, right? Front seven's trying to get after the quarterback, but the secondary is extremely vulnerable on Detroit, as we talked about. And Baker Mayfield, slip through a couple, hold on to the football for an extra second, get those guys downfield. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yesterday, Tom, 2 of my over 1.5 touchdown passes cashed easily. I mean, we did the show yesterday saying, hey, what's Patrick Mahomes going to do? Of course he's throwing 2, but it still doesn't line up with a minus 240 price point, and he easily cruised out. I think even the first quarter, he had 3 touchdown passes in that game, which went over that.
Sounds right.
Jared Goff tonight and Baker Mayfield, each 1.5. Jared Goff, best number out there, FanDuel, which we can't get to right now, minus 196. Baker Mayfield, minus 180. Like, if you ask me to my face, like, hey, Donnie, what do you think happens? Yeah, I think they both do throw 2 touchdowns, but these price points, Tom, what's up? Like, last year, minus 180 was like, oh, my God, the total 60 and no doubt about it. But everybody's being overpriced in that 1.5 market. Why? Because a lot of these guys are hitting it when they're supposed to.
Yeah, they are, and this is just part of the nature of where the books have gone. Yeah. Like, they're just going to juice things so heavily to almost discourage you from betting them. That's really what it comes down to, at least I think with a lot of props like this. Like, we know Goff has the potential to have 3 touchdowns, definitely 2. I think it's a more of an issue if he's not getting there. What does that mean for the game environment overall? And there's a chance that Montgomery has 2. Goff throws 1. Yep. Gibbs has another 1. They do some type of trick play, as we saw last week, which was Montgomery throwing a touchdown when they did it in Cincinnati. So there is an expectation, or there is a scenario where Goff actually falls under it, but I would still be interested in them scoring overall in some capacity. So whether it's a team total, whether it's something else, I still think they're going to put up 30 points tonight.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Team totals here, Detroit, I believe, is like that 30.5 number. Then I think the Buccaneers, with a little bit of juice, are 23.5, like a minus 125 price. I was just going over. Rushing props tonight in this game, because the one thing that you could sort of nail down is Detroit is going to score. They always score at home. I don't care who they're playing on defense. You can probably pencil in, Tom, 28 plus points. Now, the question is, do they get the extra field goal to get to 31? I would say they do. Jahmyr Gibbs, 55.5 is the best number out there. You take a look at Rachaad White, 49.5 is the best number. David Montgomery, 42.5. Even though that's a high-octane offense, these running backs always factor in, and they're going to get their touches, Tom. Running backs in this game tonight, Detroit style, what do you think?
I really like Montgomery. And, just looking at some of these odds, you got to shop for the best line available because there are some crazy differences, at least that I'm seeing it. You brought up with White. You said 49 was the best number.
Best number is 49.5 for Rachaad White, bet 365.
Yeah, so I'm also seeing an under 59.
That's the heavy juice with Hard Rock. Yeah,
I know that's crazy, but I'm saying there's a 10-yard middle is insane. Yeah. The point being, shop for the best lines available as always, but I really do like Montgomery tonight, and he's going to be my favorite option. I spoke to you this morning about him going over his yardage prop, 42.5, 43.5.
Yep.
There was a quote from Dan Campbell earlier this week saying that they want to restore balance to the backfield. And when Dan Campbell says something, I'm inclined to believe him, unlike other coaches, that Montgomery will play a big role. I looked at his rushing attempts at 10.5 and moved to 11.5. Just give me the yards for Montgomery going over 42, 43.
Yeah, somebody's going to bang one in. No, you didn't miss the anytime touchdowns yet there, Chops. We'll get to that in just a few moments here as we're just hitting up some of these player props here, starting with Jahmyr Gibbs. And also, I don't know what I'm getting out of the Bucs running game, but the one thing I do know, Tom, hint, last 2 games, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. If we're anticipating the Bucs scoring 3 touchdowns tonight, one of those probably coming on the ground. I'm going to play that leverage spot where it's probably going to be Rachaad White, but you know what would piss me off if I bet Rachaad White and Baker Mayfield scrambles in from the 40-yard line, which he tends to do at times. So rushing touchdown here, I think, makes some sense for them. Let's get to the actual receiving yards tonight, because a lot of these guys should be able to eat tonight if we're expecting some high numbers and certainly some high overs here. If we're factoring in here, let me just scrub on this. We'll go to receiving yards. Open, there we go. All right. Amon-Ra St. Brown tonight. Best number, it is juice, though. Minus 150 price at Hard Rock, 74.5. Let's just say high 70, 76, 77 at most books here. You take a look, also sliding it down. Mike Evans coming back from injury, Tom, 61.5. Jamison Williams, call it, let's just say 50 around that number. Ibuka, which I don't know how much I can trust, but he's listed at 49.5. Wide receiving props for me up in the air because I don't want to take Ibuka because I don't know if he can be as effective deep as he's been already because that means you open it up and that hamstring's going to be in question. Mike Evans maybe for a touchdown because Baker's going to have him as a red zone target. Who are you playing at wide receiver? Who has the advantages tonight in that?
This is a clear bounce back spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's one of my favorite players to bet on in the league just because he is going to be so consistent overall. But the 79.5 is a high number. I've been high on Jameson Williams at times. I don't love this matchup for him. I would honestly look to, in order, St. Brown, K. Dotton, and I want to trust Tez Johnson at only 10 yards. And this is under the assumption that both Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka are not going to be playing on 100% of snaps. There hasn't been any report that they're going to be on a snap count, but I am operating under the assumption that they are not going to be playing on a full complement of normal snaps and just erring on the side of caution. And therefore, someone else has to step up and catch when they're not out there. And I will say, if we get a very clear indication that when Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka are not out there, they're simply running the ball, that does present some in-game opportunities.
Let me ask you about this, because I always hey, can I get one catch out of this guy? Isaac Tesla, 22 routes he ran last game here, Tom. If he's expected to be in the starting lineup and get another 22 routes, he's 9.5, which you're asking for one. But the interesting part is you look at the target share. He doesn't factor in all that much. But he does play a decent amount on offensive snaps when they are in the passing game. Can he get one catch, 10 yards tonight as that low option?
I think so. I will be honest. I am personally very high on him. I drafted him in my dynasty league in one of the first few rounds. So I have some shares of him. Again, it comes down to he just simply doesn't play a whole lot. He doesn't have a high target share. Doesn't have a high routes run comparative to their offense overall. I will say if this game does turn into a blowout, that only helps him. And if it stays close, I think he'll be less involved. So I think he can get there.
I think it's interesting because you're really at, if he gets one catch, 7 yards, come on now. It really means they probably have him packaged in, or he just gets that third option, fourth option where it's a blown coverage and he's wide open. We haven't hit the catch market all that much. Receptions here, pretty high on some of these guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown hovering around 7.5 to 6.5, depending where you're shopping at this point. You take a look at Mike Evans, 4.5, which is decent. You take a look also at the injured Egbuka. He's 4.5. If these guys were healthy, you're in a game, let's say, 55 points, they're going to probably be playing from behind. You would love those numbers. Does anybody catch your eye who's really going to be heavily involved? Or is it a guy like maybe Rachaad White out of the backfield, 3.5 catches?
It could be White, and I think the answer is K. Dotton, but it is very heavily juiced at 2.5 minus 152. Let me just check DK real quick for his receptions. It's 3.5 at DK, and it's obviously juiced to the under. So I think K. Dotton will have to be there, but I just don't like the odds. That's just really what it comes down to.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to try to play into it here, but I'm really interested to see it. I'm glad it's a 7:00 game, so I can bet on that, have fun, watch it. So I don't have to wait up for the 10:00 game, which we'll get to in a few moments. Anytime touchdown market here for you, Chops. Jahmyr Gibbs, Fanatics, the best number at a minus 185 price. You take a look at David Montgomery, minus 105 price. Mike Evans at a plus 115 price. Amon-Ra St. Brown, minus 110. Rachaad White, plus 115. Touchdown market. I do think you get a rushing touchdown. So I think Rachaad White is a decent look. But again, Jahmyr Gibbs will score tonight. I actually think both running backs scored tonight, to be honest, between Gibbs and Montgomery, Tom.
I think they do too. I would love to try and fire off some more SGPs, and I guess I'll have to move that action to DK, but it really comes down to K. Dotton and Sam Laporta for me. Just based on where the numbers are and where the odds are, I don't want to be going to Mike Evans. I don't want to be going to Egbuka. If they were longer and I could get Mike Evans at 150 and Emeka Egbuka at plus 170, that's where I'd be interested. But the injury risk is very, very real for both of them. So give me the other consistent options. One would be K. Dotton, and then on the Detroit side would be Sam Laporta, just because I don't love the odds for the other three players. And I fully expect Jahmyr Gibbs to score tonight.
Let me ask you this question too, because again, The lineup here is kind of funny for Detroit. Like I'm seeing like Arthur Mallette. Obviously, I heard the name before. Robertson, Rocky Sin, Harper, who's barely played any snaps. Hallett's at safety. Like they are vulnerable in the back end. If we are looking at, let's just say, Igbuka on one side, Mike Evans on the other, can you sneaky get Sterling Shepard some action tonight, Tom? Because I'm seeing 25.5 as his total. Like he's got to be somewhere in there, right?
He does, and he started the season as the de facto wide receiver 3/wide receiver 4, depending on if you're factoring in Chris Godwin. Yeah. And Sterling Shepard has a connection with Baker dating back to their time at OU together. So he's playing on enough routes. He's playing on enough snaps and running enough routes for me at least have interest and comfort in knowing Sterling Shepard, because if one of those receivers goes down and can't return for the game, Shepard immediately elevates into wide receiver 2 and will see more snaps.
Gotcha. Taking a look at some other options here in this game. But as we look at some of the lines coming up closer to kickoff, -6 at most outlets here. FanDuel showing a 5.5. I don't know if that's frozen because half the people can't get it. Yeah. But it's a 54.5 number. We're expecting don't have to worry about any weather conditions. You're in a dome. It's going to be a fast track. It should be a lot of fun here. For me, I do lean towards Detroit there at the -5.5. But I do think we get points, but some other better options that we went over in the prop market does make some sense. So let's flip it over to game number 2 tonight, Tom. We got a good one out on the West Coast, Houston and Seattle, two teams that we might think that could make the playoffs on both sides here in the AFC and the NFC. A 3-point line all the way across. It's been that way all week. No movement here. 41.5, Tom. It's been that way all week long. We're expecting two good defenses out here. Are we buying into Houston playing much better in the last two games, or is that just a mirage as they head up to Seattle?
I want to say it's a bit of a mirage. Yeah. I really do. I'm not sold on... putting up 40 points against the Ravens doesn't impress me.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to take that with a grain of salt, where they just went out and they just stomped them because their defense is missing, 10 players, whatever it is. I don't know the exact amount. Cooper Rush is on the other side. There was no real resistance from the Ravens, and the Texans could do whatever they wanted. Seattle's a good defense. Texans have a good defense. Texans have a horrible offensive line. I don't love points in this game. I really don't. The fact that it's 41.5, I will say I don't love. If it was a touch higher at 43, 44.5, I would love the under. But 41's a weird number where it puts into play different scoring combinations to get you to 42, which I certainly don't have comfort in. If there's early scoring, I'm going to look to play a live under.
By the way, how about this for J. Louis Sa right here? Any scoops there for Dalton Schultz for you? What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah, I really do like Dalton Schultz. I talked to you this morning about him. I prefer his yards over the receptions, but there's no reason that he should not be involved. And coming into this week, Seahawks were bottom 10 in league for most receiving yards allowed to opposing tight ends. That is obviously yet to be updated with the week not concluded, but they were struggling against tight ends coming into this week.
How about a little Laporta action, dipping back on there for Jay?
Totally fine.
All right, there you go. Look at that little tight end action tonight as we get going. Let's get to the quarterbacks here in game number 2. C.J. Stroud, best number on the board over 222.5, listed at Bet Rivers. Best number on the board for Sam Darnold, Hard Rock here, over 218.5. You're expecting defenses here. Now, the one thing they do have really good number 1 wide receivers. So we'll start there. C.J. Stroud, Sam Darnold. Any juice on either one of those?
Not really. Honestly, it's very, very uninteresting from a quarterback perspective. The defenses are not a spot that I want to trust. Could I go to Sam Darnold thinking that they'll go down swinging just because the run defense for the Texans is so good, and seeing the split between Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet isn't encouraging. It's not comforting when it comes to betting those props. So if I had to choose one, it'd absolutely be Sam Darnold. I think he goes down swinging, firing the ball. I wouldn't mind seeing an interception from him tonight. Yeah. Or wouldn't be surprised to see it, I should say. But 225 is a number he should be able to get to.
Yeah. And Bob, let's take a look here at the touchdown passes, because unlike what you're seeing in game number 1, Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield with massive numbers. Yeah. Sam Darnold to throw to, plus 134. C.J. Stroud to throw to, plus 145. So is this more of a mix on, let's try to put it this way. Even if you don't like it either way, Tom, which quarterback, if you had a free play, would you say would get the 2 touchdown passes tonight?
Just give me Darnold.
Yeah.
I just think the offense is a little bit more well-rounded, where, JSN's having an unbelievable year. But at the end of the day, if you wanted to say JSN and Collins kind of cancel each other out, give me the running backs. Give me Charbonnet and Walker ahead of Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. And give me some, A.J. Barner, the backup tight end. Give me Arroyo, the other tight end. Give me those options ahead of the options on the Texans.
Let's get to some of these rushing props tonight. Kenneth Walker listed at 47.5, but that's heavily juiced at Hard Rock. So call that around low 50s at that point if you want actual regular juice, if you can use that word. Zach Charbonnet, 35.5 here. Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. By the way, let's just start here. Like, if you had to pick one running back, it just seems like A and 1A at this point. Both of these guys don't really seem to do a lot of damage. Is there any value in either one of those guys?
I think it's Woody Marks. I think they have to start giving him more opportunities overall. Like, Nick Chubb is just – I don't want to say he's not viable, but from a yards per carry perspective, Nick Chubb is not there. Woody Marks, he's a rookie. They drafted him for a reason. You might as well start giving him touches. And again, some breakout games for him haven't been super consistent, but I would take Woody Marks well ahead of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Woody Marks, man. It's funny. And by the way, is Mixon ever coming back to this team, or is he just shot at this point?
I don't think there's the reports about him have been all over the place, and there's nothing encouraging saying that he's going to play this season.
Yeah. No, and again, when an older running back starts to break down with a lot of carries, that's technically what you get at this point here and the way you go. Let's look at some of those receiving yards in game number 2, Tom. I remember tweeting out, like, when the numbers first came, I think it was 750 was the over-under on Jackson Smith and Jigba on the season. Dude just plants every single week, Tom. He's listed at 85.5, going up against a pretty good defense. Just starting with Jackson Smith and Jigba, it almost seems like he's bulletproof on a week-to-week basis. Does he go off again tonight?
I want to say no. I really want to say no. And, I'm seeing 89.5 at least over on DK. And, part of me wants to play the under on that just because the matchup, he's going to see Derek Stingley Jr. And he's been solid he was solid against Devontae in week 1. He was solid against Mike Evans when they played on that Monday night game. Like, he is constantly solid. Now, to see Jackson Smith and Jigba have 7 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, like, that's still a pretty good game, but he would be falling under his prop. So I'm inclined to say under on JSN, despite how unbelievable he has been. And when you look at some of the underlying metrics, his yards per route run is over 4, is bananas. And he can obviously break that off, but I think the matchup is too tough. And the Texans know this. They're going to be allocating extra resources to take him out of the game and say, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Barner, and the 2 running backs, you guys beat us, but we're going to stop JSN tonight.
It's a good point you bring out because you can't do that in game number 1 tonight. I'm just going to take one guy out. Like, they have a million other guys. So that's my next question. Like, Nico Collins, 71.5 listed for Houston. But when you go down the list, like, Christian Kirk can't seem to get right and get healthy here, which is really damaging their offense. But you go down, it's Cooper Kupp, it's Dalton Schultz, as we talked about, like, really backup guys that you're just Jaden Higgins. You're far down the list. Is there any, like, as you talk about, like, Isaac T. Slaw, like, oh, maybe he can get one catch. There is somebody that you would actually look to in this game. They say, hey, if I had to have a bet in that would work.
Yeah, it'd be Torrey Horton. One of their young receivers, 3rd string technically behind JSN and Cooper Kupp, but he's been kind of slowly evolving in the offense. And a lot of people are super high on him. And, from a pure athletic standpoint, I think he would be the option over 19.5. If they can't get it to JSN, and again, the Texans defense are going to say someone else has to beat us. Cooper Kupp just doesn't bring enough juice for him. He doesn't have that fire anymore. I would take one of the young guys.
Yeah, it should be fun to see how this actually turns out here. Let me just bring up here the touchdown market in this game. If I can flip this over and it goes through. Zach Charbonnet, plus 170 price point. Who else is listed on this? Kenneth Walker, plus 170 number. Nico Collins, plus 155. Jackson Smith and Jigba, plus 140. Like, you're getting really good numbers because obviously the correlation of a total in the low 40s and what you can get. And also understand this. We talk about weather conditions in Detroit because there is none. It's a dome. Good weather conditions tonight in Seattle. You're not worried about any of the rain or anything like that.
Yeah, I like Ken Walker. He's at plus 160 on DK, and Charbonnet is at plus 125. That just doesn't make sense to me. Charbonnet is coming off a really, really tough game the other week. And, Ken Walker is their de facto starter. Like, I know they're alternating series or whatever they're calling it this year, but Ken Walker is their starter, and a lot of people think he is better when it's all said and done. So getting a plus 160 number, I know the defense on the Texans side is an issue, but I still think betting into a good number is always a good thing to do.
Yeah, some of those numbers are cheaper. And again, this game listed at 3 points. It's going to kick off at 10 o'clock tonight. So you got plenty of time as we sit right here 5 minutes before kickoff in game number 1. I'm not all that interested in that game. We'll see how that turns out. But for me, a lot of interest in that Tampa Bay-Detroit game at this point here. High-scoring game. Detroit goes up against Tampa Bay. This could be a key game when you talk about maybe tiebreakers at the end of the season and the health there of Mike Evans is coming back. Bucs here. Should be a fun game to watch as it plays out tonight. But Tom, we got a couple minutes left. Major League Baseball tonight. Game number 7. They're telling you, the odds makers, flip the coin on that game. 7.5. This morning when we're doing the early line, it's like a -122, -123 price, -130. So not huge moves here. Bet365 actually has -135. Who do you think wins this game? Because if you just say to me, I think everything is even. I lean towards the home team, the team that got the win last night, Toronto, game number 7 in their own building. That's the way I go tonight. And also, did a little TikTok video where I said, you know what? George Kirby is a really good strikeout pitcher. They got to him last time. I'm going over 3.5 as a team total for Toronto tonight. I think they can get 4 runs in this one, Tom.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, I want to bet on the Mariners again based on the odds. I think just taking again, if I was going to use the FanDuel boost, if I could, I would boost that up and just say, give me the best number possible on them just because it is game 7. I'm going to take as much plus money as possible. But I do think the Blue Jays have what it takes. I would absolutely go over 3.5 for their prop. And the home team, the momentum. And we got to also remember, there's pressure on the Mariners. This is the farthest they've ever been as a franchise. There's like a real pressure that they are dealing with and failing to meet those expectations is a massive letdown.
There we go, Tommy. Look at that. How quick did that half hour go by tonight? 2 football games, Monday Night Football, Major League Baseball game tonight, NBA action tomorrow. It's how we get down to business. For me, liking the totals in the first game here, of course. Some options for touchdowns, yes, but I do think Tampa does get a rushing touchdown tonight. Put me on the goal. Look, don't do me like the Ravens did me a couple weeks ago. The team rushing touchdown. We get on the goal line, a couple quarterback sneaks, which I didn't mind on a tush push, and I still couldn't get in. Just give me one. Sneak it in early as I did the previous week with the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles, and away you go at that point, Tommy. How about for you? One last go around tonight for the people out there.
I like the over in the first game. David Montgomery over 43.5 rushing yards, whatever it might be. Dalton Schultz over his receiving prop, which is 38.5, whatever it might be. If they're scoring early in the second game, I will be looking to take a live under in that game. I just don't think we're going to see that many points overall.
All right, Tommy, we're 2 minutes away from kickoff. A lot of fun to be had. Thursday night football. We'll be back in gear here, but the NBA starts tomorrow. It's a good time, man. October, when everything starts to collide, and we're just 2 weeks away from college basketball as well. Good stuff out there in the docket. Thank you guys for tuning in. The questions were great out of the chat box. And yes, ChopyX, FanDuel is still down at this point, which is amazing. Down all day long. I can't imagine the millions of dollars that they're not going to take out of the people's pockets tonight with some losing wagers. But that'll do it for tonight. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for tuning in.